It's a pleasure for me today to introduce Craig Mullins on stage there with me. And yeah. And I mean it. It's a real pleasure to be there. And we decided to change a little bit the schedule and to propose different. So.
Mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you get my screen up here so we can?
Yes, please. Could you switch? Yeah.
You can show the wares. Okay. We have 3 ways we could go today, and I'm going to judge it on audience applause. The first way is we can just do an interview. I'll be able to concentrate on the answers to the interview, and hopefully it'll be thorough. The second way is I prepared a 1-hour demo from doing this painting from scratch. It's something I did on the plane coming over here, just a sketch from Casablanca, and I didn't look at it, so it's really quite changed from that. But anyway, I go from blank canvas, the drawing, to this in an hour, and that's would be the background to the interview. Mm-hmm. Or I asked Ian McQue's, because he went this morning, and I love his drawings and designs so much, that I'm going to take his drawing, and I did this painting a while ago as a test for the mixer brush of something that looks vaguely like Scotland. Mm-hmm. And I can paint this up using mostly the mixer brush if that was something of anybody's technical interest. So, first way is interview only. Second way, watch the video of me painting while doing the interview. Who wants me to do the interview and paint Ian's thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That was also my choice.
Well, clearly the interview won. So, okay, before we get started, I'd like to thank everybody for inviting me here. It's quite an honor. I've never been in Paris before. The organizers have been wonderful. I've had a great time. I've had to work while I'm here, which sucks, but that's the way it goes. So I'm just really happy to be a part of this. I've met some people that I've wanted to meet for a long time, and say I've been to Paris. So I guess we can start with the questions, yes. And I'll get started painting.
Yeah.
I'll answer them as I paint.
Yeah,
and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and we'll see, and we will improvise. So if you need to focus at one moment, say,
okay.
Shut up, and I will shut my mouth. So yeah, so the purpose, how many of you know Craig? Please, raise your hand. So that was my guess. And how many of you already saw the interview we did with Bobby Chu on schoolism? Yeah, a lot of. So yeah. So we will.
Half.
Yeah, half. So we will start with just a brief introduction. So about your career, or about your study, and about how you get involved in digital painting and in painting in general. So how did you become you as a digital artist first?
I suppose my earliest mind-bending artistic experience happened at my own house when my parents bought some landscape paintings by an artist named Jim Wilcox, who is in Wyoming and paints the Grand Teton Mountains.
Wow.
The Grand Teton.
Yes, Grand Teton. Yes, right. Really nice.
When I told my girls what that meant, they just rolled around in the back of the car. So, so I remember looking at those paintings quite carefully and getting up close to them, and just realizing that it's just a bunch of nonsense, just a bunch of scribbles. When you get back, it's quite magical. So I lived with these things every single day of my young life. I mean, for years, looking at them. So it really, the shapes are still burned into my head. And I go back and look at those paintings in my mom and dad's house, and I see, how much they influenced me. Just being around, just unconsciously. But then I was not an artist. I did not become a fine artist because my mom and dad are very practical people and said you can't make a living at it.
Yeah.
So you're to be an industrial designer if that's what you want to do. And so I went off to Art Center to study industrial design. And I was more interested in the illustration and rendering side than the design side. But I did work at Ford for a little bit, designing cars. So that's basically how I got into it, is through the industrial design side of things.
And I remember you explained in different interviews around the World Web, talking about how you started with digital at Ford, for example. I think that was at Ford.
Yes.
I think I also remember in our interview you told that your father also was an engineer. He had a computer at home, so you were already involved.
Did I say that?
Yes.
He worked on. That was a very interesting thing he was working on. Was Ian was talking about the Saturn V boosters this morning.
Yeah.
There was another company, General Dynamics, at the time that had an alternative for the Saturn V. It was called the Sea Dragon, and it was this gigantic rocket that sat in the water, because if it's in water, it's partially buoyant and it's self-supporting. You don't need this gantry. You don't need the additional weight to keep the thing up.
Yeah.
So it was going to have 6 stories of liquid hydrogen in water, but it didn't go anywhere. But anyway, yes, my dad was an engineer.
Yeah. And so, but and you were also in touch with computers. So before you starting to draw on it or to figure out how that could work.
We got our first computer, I think, in 1980.
Ooh, wow.
And I was programming in BASIC and doing all kinds of fun things with it.
Did you remember some basics? Some coding?
Oh, yeah.
Because I did also, but I didn't remember anything at all.
Yeah, I could probably make an infinite loop.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Could you
just for old times' sake.
And so I remember also hearing you talking about when you're starting to use. I don't remember, and I think you don't also, if I well remember this interview. You don't remember what was this software, but that was a dedicated workstation where you did your first compositing and some like painting, even if that was not built for that.
Yes, it was a dedicated piece of hardware. I'm getting some stamp there. That's bad. It was called a Dubner paint box.
Yeah.
And it was very similar to Photoshop. Did what Photoshop does. And we would use it to paint glass areas into clay models. So the clay models actually looked like real cars.
Yeah. But that was clay, if I well remember.
Yeah,
so
5,000 pound hunk of clay that I would be able to render glass so you could see through it and see the headrest and see the interior.
Yeah.
And it really makes it look like a real car, because they take the clay models and they put foil over the whole thing to make it a reflective form.
And you started so in digital by also, if I will remember, painting just through the glasses, because that was clay. So if clay, it's no transparency or stuff like that, if I well remember. And you started to use for the first time, I think, a photo composition software to do some faking by painting something. Yeah,
well, they would take the clay out onto an outdoor place and then photograph it there. So we didn't have to worry about that. Also to get the reflections correct. Yeah. And how did you escape from this, industrial design stuff? How did you started in the industry of becoming an illustrator, a matte painter, or what was the beginning for your career? I think when I was at Ford. Well, it was when I came back to Art Center, I knew that I did not want to be an industrial designer or a car designer.
Oh, yeah.
Because the people that I really admired there, the really excellent designers and artists were kept in positions of subservience, and the idiots were promoted above them.
As always, no?
The people in nice suits, you know,
I know.
the ones that had no talent and no business telling anybody what to do. And that really, you know, to be like a 50 or 60-year-old designer who's been on the boards for that long, and you're still drawing hubcaps, and you can draw like Michelangelo, and then this tubby guy comes in from his 3 martini lunch who dropped out of art school and is telling you, it just does something to you. And I didn't want to be that person, because I mean, I saw these guys who really were 55, 60 years old, you know, with health problems and ulcers. And so I said, no, this is not it. I would prefer to go back to Art Center and do the fun stuff, which is the drawing, because I can sit in a room and have absolute control over everything.
Yeah, and I think we perhaps several and everybody there felt that in our life. It's sometimes, even if you're scared to leave something because that pay your bill, that sometimes it's more. I can be more afraid about, realizing 10 years after I'm still there and that's not the place I'm supposed to be. And I think that was perhaps the case also for you, being involved with something you didn't really want, that didn't really matter for you at first. And so after that, at your school, so did you have some great teacher influencing you, or how did you develop your own journey, regarding your inspiration, or regarding your influences around that? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Did you have a clear vision at this time of what kind of illustration, of what kind of art you wanted to do, or was just an empty canvas and you just started to figure what you want to do?
I guess you're asking is how consistent my tastes have been since the beginning of my artistic career. Yeah, I'd say they have been fairly consistent. I'd say they've widened considerably. I think when I was maybe a teenager, I thought that all 20th century art was a Bolshevik conspiracy. But now I argue quite the opposite, and I really appreciate all the wonderful 20th century artists that took so much guff for trying to expand our tiny little brains. They're martyrs, or they were. So, I mean, in that sense, I've definitely expanded, but there's still some things about my tastes that are, exactly the same. I still love Sargent. I think that was the first artist that I saw that Abbeville Press book with Lady Agnew on the cover, and kind of went like, wow. It was kind of like looking at those Wilcox paintings when I was a kid. It really had an effect on me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think I need to paint for like 5 minutes, and I want to talk about
please. I told you.
Some of the mixer brush.
Yeah. Please.
How many people out there have started to use the mixer brush seriously? Just like a bare few. How many people want to try it? Yeah, everybody. Yeah. What the mixer brush is, to me, it contains about 90% of the functionality of Painter, but with 5 or 6 very well designed and concise controls. The tool is not done. It has a lot of quirks. It's unstable. It has performance problems. It's been around for 4 or 5 years, and hopefully Adobe is going to get back to it very soon, if I have any say in it.
In any case, I will push for that internally.
But it's interesting how it works. As you see, I'm sampling actually off the image, and it is, depending on the brush size, it's taking whatever is under that sampling point. You can see what it's sampling here in this little tiny window. I hope that window becomes a big buffer that I can edit with all the tools of Photoshop. That's my dream.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is what you're painting with, and it's simply stamping that around. Now, if you have the controls up here, the only one I really worry about are wetness. The load, there's some effects you can do with that. I wouldn't worry about that. The mix doesn't matter. If you're at 0 wetness, it just paints like this. And the flow, you can use that to a certain extent for opacity. So if you want something that's much more subtle, you turn down the flow. But I found that controlling the opacity, actually more the way you would think, is done with the texture function. And let's go back to this. So you can see the way that I've glazed this sky. It's very much like something cool underneath, and then I've taken a warmer pastel on a paper and rubbed it over the top so that there are discrete pixels of warm and cool next to each other. And that bounce, well, I like to call it bounce, really is, to me, when I go out and look at an overcast sky, that's what I see. I say, is that cool? Is it warm? It's both at the same time, and it's screaming at me with this subtlety. It's just so loud. So you control that through painting through a texture, this function here. So if I get, let's say, this kind of brush, and there's some stamping problems there. Let's go with a different texture here. So this is a canvas texture. So it's painting somewhat opaque. I'll take the flow back up so you can see. Okay, now this is nice and opaque. If the depth is really what is going to make the opacity work for you. So if I want to do this very subtle glazing, you can play with the brightness and contrast of the texture, and that's probably familiar with that from the normal brush. But playing with the depth is how deeply the brush is being embedded into the surface. So if I turn this depth way down, then I'm getting a very light. See how that affects start. And it is just a canvas texture that I'm painting through. And the depth jitter, I don't mess around with that. It doesn't seem to have much of an effect on anything. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm doing with this. So now you have a basic understanding of what the mixer brush is and how it's controlled. So you see me playing around with the different controls. This is how I'm doing it. Okay, back to questions.
And the brush itself is a custom brush or a Bristol brush or?
Excuse me?
The brush itself, the shape of the brush?
The tip is just any brush shape at all.
Okay. Yeah. But in your case, is that the Bristol brush or is that a custom shape?
Oh, a dynamic brush shape?
Yeah.
I don't use those because they're so unstable.
Yeah. But you have to give me your list.
Okay. Well, I mean, you guys know these dynamic brushes.
Yeah.
And if you use any type of extreme function with them or make them large, it just crashes Photoshop like that. And you write to the developers and they say, if I can't reproduce it, I can't do anything about it. It's frustrating, but it's true. So unless I can tell them exactly what settings that crash Photoshop and get back to exactly and do it just the right angle, you can't just say it is generally unstable. They have too many other problems that are reproducible that they're responsible for. So bugs like that just won't ever get fixed, I'm afraid.
So my question was just about, because it looks like a little bit, so you recreate a custom brush presets, which look like, Bristol. Yeah. Oh, cool. So let's start. Sorry, I'm just lost in your artwork, so just need to focus again on my question. And so when was your first job really as digital artist? Exiting the school, the Fine Art Academy. So, what was your first job professionally?
Professional job using digital tools?
Yes, or any tools.
Oh, well, my first job, I painted a whole bunch of interiors and exteriors for a Princess Cruises ship.
Oh.
And those were painted in gouache. I think I got like $15,000 for 5 images, and it took me 3 weeks.
Ooh.
And I was just, yeah.
That's what I got.
And this is 1991, so
Yeah.
it was really great. But my first digital job was, let's see, probably doing some concept artwork for a director named Steve Beck out of ILM, who was doing some ride shows. And, so it was still very early on in things, and I had no idea that, now this is way too dark, but I don't want to, nobody had any idea that how to paint with it, and there were no Wacom's.
Yeah.
So it was a very gradual thing, learning how to paint with it, even trying to do it. I look at it kind of like kite surfing.
Yeah.
Surfboards have been around a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Kites have been around a long time. But who is the person that spent, a year in the water, just completely convinced that these two things could go together?
Yeah.
And everybody is on the beach laughing at them falling off again and again and again.
Yeah. You mean crazy enough to do that?
Yeah, and digital art was kind of that way.
Yeah.
And I would try to tell people, okay, I'm going to do this digitally, and they kind of say, no, I don't want a shiny sphere.
Yeah, that was the case.
Yeah,
at the
it's
beginning,
like,
that was.
shiny? No.
No, come on. Oh. And your first, when did you start with Photoshop?
1992, I think.
Yeah, the beginning. Wow.
Oh, God, I'm using a dynamic brush there.
And I
got away with something.
had the chance to play with an emulation of the first version of Photoshop. There is some emulator of the first version of Photoshop.
Oh, really?
Yes, and you can play right now with that. And
you could probably run it through a browser.
No, you run an emulator on your computer, and you run the real Photoshop with a floppy disk emulation. Right. And actually, it's pretty cool, because you discover that a lot of tools like a stamp tool, like brush, was already there, but the issue is you just have no layers at this period, at this time, and just one
That's
undo.
Right. No layers.
Yeah, and one undo or nothing, or that appears at the version 2 or something like that. How do you deal with that? That when you experiment, it's funny, but day to day.
Stop. How do you deal with no layers?
Layers and no multiple undo and stuff like that. That was in another word. One thing which amazing me, and we discussed about that yesterday, is about having how do you embrace a new medium and the limitation. So how do you react regarding the accident? So digital creates some accident or some limitation, some constraint, and you need to work around. And digital, any kind of digital, will also give you some other perspective or over accident or over limitation. So, and you did a lot of experimentation in digital and traditional.
Yeah.
So how do you embrace this new challenge and this new way to approach a medium?
Well, I think it's a bit like the first goal of any new medium or new form of expression is establishing some kind of control. Mm. And the way to test that is by emulating previous mediums. Yeah. That's the way, acoustical stuff, the Moog synthesizer or Kurzweil piano tried to emulate a piano. Yeah. So I still think we're kind of, in that world of okay, can you make it look like traditional media? Can you make people feel comfortable enough with this to go to the transition? Maybe not, but a lot of people have come to me and said, I really liked your work when it was just the hard round brushes, because that felt digital, that was new.
Yeah.
And all this textural stuff, that's just, I don't like that. I mean, I can understand the point.
Yeah.
But so I mean, if I understand your question is how,
do you have some rules, some process, some pattern to discover something, or is that a new game each time, and you don't try to bring with you some some habits and some fixed point of view? How did you approach that? Did you have a specific process? I think the answer is
well,
no.
No, and I think I talked about that in the Bobby Chu interview. Is I try to change my process all the time.
Yeah.
And the process that I'm using, for shows like this are more chosen for their entertainment value than being unusual or effective. And I might work very differently doing a variety of different assignments. But there's only one thing more boring than watching paint dry, and that's paint being applied. So I try to make this type of process to be a little bit more entertaining. So I'm finally just having to go some darks here. I won't worry about it. I don't even know if I'm using the mixer brush. Am I? I don't know.
Well, yeah.
So process is something that you do have control over. You don't have a lot of control over your predilections and your personality. For instance, I like to use finding things in abstract shapes because I can generate, digital is wonderful at generating massive numbers of abstract shapes. And that's going to get around my problem, because if I draw a pen, not only am I going to draw it with the same hand in the same way and fall into the same habits and see the same shapes over and over, that is a problem of how to break things up. And trying to change up your process with traditional work, you can do with different pens, different papers. You can draw left-handed, you can draw blindfolded, you can do all kinds of things. You can do all those things with digital. But with digital or any type of art, you really have to change how you do things, invert them. So for instance, with this painting, if I really wanted to do something strange with it, I'd start up here in this corner and just start rendering clouds and move slowly down. And then, I think maybe the edge of the ship is here, and work with a small brush and do the details first, which is exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. But you're going to get to a different place. Yeah. Because all these ideas that we're given in art school they are suggestions, and they are not absolutes. You can invert them, you can ignore them. The cliche is, there are no rules, only tools. But, well, anyway, that gets me into something I don't even want to get into, because I'll just start doing that and won't paint anything. So go on with the next question.
Yeah. No, actually a related one, because I think, perhaps I'm wrong, please correct me if I think sometimes you have, there is a difference between mechanical stuff, learning a tool, and repeating to acquire some techniques, and after that it's just part of your tool set. But it's the instincts come on top of that. So I think we can split between real mechanism, which is just you don't think about, like when you are a kid, you start to draw letters and you do a lot of line of letters, A, B, E, C, etc. And at one time, now we can't think, we didn't think at all, we don't think at all at how we do that. We think about what we want to express with these letters. So I think there is some techniques and some tool sets, digital painter, illustrator need to have in their pocket, to start doing, to express themselves. And for you, what what are the principal tool sets they need to acquire, the skills they need to acquire, and to embrace, repeat, to be part of their toolbox.
It sounds, well, to answer that simply, what you seem to be asking is, what skill is at the intersection of a whole bunch of different needs to go in a whole bunch of different directions because a person's career is long, and what's the real foundation to go to be a creative person?
Yeah. And then after that, the other part of the question is, and after that, you need to avoid habits regarding creation, the part of the process which is creation. But I would like to split, if I say another word, the technical aspect you need to have. That's all. And the other part, how you manage to don't fall in the habits regarding the creation.
Well, I mean, falling into habits and doing the same thing over and over is part of being a pipeline and being a commercial artist, because commercial art requires a high degree of reliability. But to answer the first part of your question, I really think that it's the primacy of drawing is the most important skill that you can learn, and that's going to serve you no matter where you go. And I think the best way to learn how to draw is to become an animator. That stresses all areas of the artist more than any other discipline in the commercial arts. And I tell people that, and they kind of go, "Well, I don't want to draw cute little cartoon bears." No, I don't want to. No, you're thinking way too small and concrete. But I think if I had to go back to school and do it all over again, I would, at the very least, go into some discipline at first that required me to draw hundreds of thousands of drawings, going from beginning to the end of doing image making many times. And storyboards could do that, animation can do that. But that is going to form probably the best basis. So the second half of your question was?
Well, so when you acquire these skills, mastering your tool, how it's related to the previous question, by the way, but how do you put yourself regarding different medium in the position to try new things? For example, let me just clarify that with an example. Did you think also it's close to the question? Let me undo that. I don't want to repeat this question because it was related to the first one, so I will change to another one. For example, regarding the traditional and the digital stuff, for me there is no real frontier regarding that. That's just two different tools. And when we talk about digital, which kind of digital? And when we talk about traditional, is that oil painting, watercolor? That's not the same approach. But because you do both, when you started in traditional, sometime you learn some lessons and you want to transpose in digital. For example, digital, you can have multiple undo, you can zoom too much and add too much level of details. So that could be a trap, perhaps.
Yes.
And so for you, what kind of lesson you can really learn and which is really easily applicable on the digital, and what kind of rule, like in cinema, we know that the dog, we pretend to just have just a straight camera, like that, and we just have no cuts, and just it's a way to put you in danger in a context and to create new stuff. Sorry, it's a little long. I'm looking around, but do you think there is some lesson from the traditional you can apply to the digital to avoid some traps of the digital, over zooming?
Well, yeah, it takes quite a bit of discipline to do that, and you have to mean, I remember seeing an interview with a ZBrush artist who simply doesn't use the automatic mirroring. He says, "What? You don't use the automatic? Why on earth would you not do that?" I said, "Well, traditional sculptors didn't have that, and I don't want that crutch weakening my eye." And it's just, it takes me more time, but you're a sculptor, right?
Yeah.
And so he approached it really that way. How many guys are familiar with alchemy? Yeah, most people here. There's no undoing that. And it's intended as a spooge machine, just generating who knows what. Now, I have mixed feelings about that. As I've said, if I rely on digital's ability to make endless varieties of random shapes, then I can simply suggest, I like that one. What have I really done? There's something about me that's being taken out of the loop, which is why I'm excited to get more back into drawing, on paper, because I do think that having to commit to a piece of paper and to work with your mistakes and live with them, it makes you more thoughtful, and it just changes the work. But I think my whole career is like figuring out how traditional and digital can support each other and make something that's stronger. And digital it's very easy to have digital completely take over. The reason I bought a computer in Photoshop in the first place is because I wanted to scan color roughs in and change them before I would commit to a big piece of paper. And then it just took over. It just moved in. So does anybody have any questions about the mixer brush or anything? No?
Yes. The question. Oh, mixer brush. Yes. What is it? It's a tool under the pencil tool. So if you hold on your click on the brush, you have a mixer tool, the mixer brush, and so perhaps you want to transfer to the rest. That was just the technical part where we can find this tool, and I think it's a shift B to go straight there. But I'll leave you just focus, and I will answer to this one. So mixer brush, the attempt is just to kind of mimic all painting stuff. So for example, if your canvas is weight, that will bring, when you've bristled, you will bring some wet color in your brush, and that will mix your color loaded in your bristle with the paint on your canvas, and that will mix both. So if your canvas is really wet, so you have some presets, wet presets and less wet, let's say like that, dry preset, and so you can just mix like you have to do on old painting, traditional old painting. And you can load not only a solid color, that's what Craig explained just earlier. So generally with a classical brush in Photoshop, you just load one color, or perhaps you make some mix between the double color, adjustment in the brush panel. But in this case, you can sample, like with a stamp tool, you can sample an area on your painting, and that will be used as a multiple color brush. Is that answer? Yeah.
So who did the work on the mixer brush? Was it Jerry Harris?
I think yes. I'm not sure at all, but I think yes.
Yeah, I tried to explain to him that the mixer brush has, because he designed it and he thinks it's only for people doing hobbyist messing up photos. And said, no, it has much greater uses than that. Like, I don't know what they are. See you later. So rumbled off like a bear.
Yeah. Question?
When you work on high resolution compositions, 8K, 16K,
Yeah.
isn't that a risk to have a laggy tool with mixed brush?
Yeah.
It is extremely laggy with sample all layers turned on. If that is turned off, and you have a little bit of spacing your brush tip, not so you're stamping too much, it's completely tolerable. Also, having a fast machine helps.
Yeah. And I have a tips also for you. When you paint a lot in Photoshop, so the history stores some tiling feature, on your desktop, on your hard drive disk. And so you have an old feature in the edit menu, which is clear the history or stuff like that. But in this case, if you clear the history, you can undo. So you can just define an action. Everybody know what is action in Photoshop? Action is like macro, so you can record what you do. And so if you have to do several steps, technical steps, like clear the cache and perhaps make a snapshot in your history. So you can, in place of having to do 3 steps each time manually by yourself, you can record that. And for example, one thing I did when I was involved in coloring a few years ago for comic books with a computer which was not really powerful, is just to record an action saying, create a snapshot in your history and clear the cache in the history. So with that, you will have a snapshot at every step where you press the button. So that the moment when you press the button is also the moment where you can save. And that's because when you say save, because you think it's the time to record this step. So with a single button, you will have more place on your hard drive because that will release all the stuff. And that's pretty easy to put that on a button. Does that make sense for some of you?
That sounds awesome. I was busy painting. I'm going to expect them to explain it later.
Yeah.
You were saying something about having the ability to draw a straight line in Windows 10?
Yeah. Ability to, sorry?
About a protractor function in Windows 10?
Maybe? Oh, yeah.
Yes. Please tell everybody.
Oh, no, I saw that, but I'm not. I'm not sure to can explain because I just saw the I don't even know how to pronounce that. I'm not sure to explain in the details, or perhaps I didn't saw your point. But
probably didn't understand what I was after.
Yes.
Well, what I want is the ability to just have a protractor on the screen, be able to rotate it, move it around, and then draw straight lines with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's not in Photoshop, fortunately. That's in Illustrator. In Illustrator on Windows 10, yes, you have that, but not in Illustrator.
In
not
some
in
other Adobe product. So it's even
Yes.
in another Adobe product, but not Photoshop.
Yes.
Instead, they're trying to sell us Adobe stock photos every time we start up a program.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But in fact,
Sorry.
You're welcome. But in fact, I'm inside Adobe. I'm just local in France, so I'm not in the development team. But I do something. I do something, and my advice every time I'm on stage doing some demo, some stuff like that, I explain something during. And I know it's not for you. This question is not for you because I know you were involved in beta programs, so that's not for you. But I was always crying against Adobe. We are asking for that for a long time. And after that, I just realized, yeah, to my friend, but never to Adobe. And in fact, for Photoshop, you have a portal named feedback.photoshop.com. And you can put really quickly some feature requests, some bug declaration, and stuff like that. And you have a strong community, and if you do that properly, I did that personally in the public portal, and I had some features inside Photoshop, which was my request. And because the community joined me on this request and voted on it, it's in. So we have a power. So I know you did your job. So that's not for you, but generally that will help because the developer, like you told us, developer can figure out, they are developers, they can figure out how you use the tool and what's annoying you. For example, we have a lot of small feature. We name that just do it feature. Think it's crappy. I have to check this box each time. So it's just a small thing, but a developer can figure that, and a developer want to work in just smart and brilliant idea. They don't want to fix some stuff. So I think you know John Knack, previously product manager at on Photoshop, and he started in CS4, if I well remember, to do this just do it feature. So you could ask, and a small thing that honoring you, and if you have some really cool feature you want, just do a screenshot, do a small record that help to explain, because sometimes you describe and the developer will not understand or the project manager will not understand. Just put that online. And yeah, yeah, of course. And by the way, so that's the way that works. I have 3-4 features, but I didn't use my internal, let's say not power, but internal path. I just did that in the official public portal. So that could work. And generally, I do that, and also I put that on my Twitter, say, hey, people, if you like that, please vote. That helps also to grow the number of votes. If I'm alone with this feature request, that doesn't work, of course. So, yeah. Yeah, sometimes not. Yeah. Yes. I voted on that one. Yeah. I'm trying to push hard. So again, I'm a small fish at Adobe, in this big ocean. So, but I'm trying also to push a lot with that. Because I met some great artists like you, I try to say, it's normal. Photoshop, if you use Photoshop, is because you need pixels in general. But that could be for digital painting, for photo compositing, that could be for screen design, that could be for a lot of stuff. So we had to focus on some subject time to time in different versions of Photoshop. But personally, I try to push to say, now it's time for digital painter. It's our turn. So I'm trying to push on that. So if you have feedbacks, please send me. I will send me an email, and I will try to push inside.
There was an official risk of answer to that.
Yeah. 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 No, but sometimes it's weird. I remember a feature request I did a long time ago on this official portal, and I say that was a notion, perhaps in Illustrator or InDesign, when you define a color in the swatch panel, you have the notion of global color. So in Photoshop, obviously for digital painting, that doesn't mean anything because you pick a color and you paint with it. But for screen UI or stuff like that, for solid color, layer, so you could have a link. So if you change the color applied in different places on your swatches panel, that will change also the dependencies. And the guy answered me, yeah, but there is a bunch of pixels on Photoshop, and we can't, track every pixel. I said, no, in my equation, that was not that. That was for FX, that was for stuff like that. So sometime after that, I started to do recording with other software that works like that, and some quick recordings, not, just long edition, and also some quick mock-up to explain clearly what I want. And that works better in that way. And for the subfolder, I'm totally agree with you. Yes, I'm begging also for this one. And I will try again to push really hard. Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah, please.
Say again? I can't hear you. The mixer brush? Oh yeah, yeah, blending. But it's not really smudging. I find that if you take the wetness control up, and then start painting, it has this kind of smeary quality that is very digital. I would prefer to have extremely complex but discrete elements blend visually by going like this, rather than there being a perfect smear. But that being said, like an oil painting, you see it in a lot of naturalistic or academic oil paintings where the only time you see that type of blend is at the core shadow of generally meat here or other bulge on the body that has a core shadow to it, and you'll see that real clear smear. I mean, it's just a perfect gradation. Everywhere else, there's nothing like that, except maybe like in areas around the hair. But yeah, I would prefer to have my edges to be much more complex, so I don't like smearing. Sometimes I'll use what's this business, this, but that's kind of a textured brush, so it has a little bit of information to it. It's not. That's kind of neat looking, actually. I'll leave it like that. So yeah, to answer your question, I try not to smear. Does that answer your question? It's what? Yeah, paint the values next to each other and make the shape interesting, and then make the values close enough together so that your eye blends them, and then you're in control instead of this blarp that just doesn't look like anything.
Oh. Yeah. Trying also to answer you, watching you, but another question we discussed just to prepare this interview was about, I know for sure when I'm taking a look at a lot of your work, which really amazed me is your sense of light in general, even if it's completely different environment, completely different moods. That could be spaceships, that could be landscape, but the way you approach light is really subtle and I would like to also, and I know there is something that's really important in some previous interview I saw from you, is the difference between value and color, and is there one more important than the other? Is that a complex mix? How do you feel about that?
Well, to answer your last question first, the hierarchy is drawing is 98% of it.
Yeah.
I can draw this is a drawing that has shapes that make sense. I can make this black and the background white, or I can make it the other way. I could make it against a gray background. You can do anything you want with the values. The drawing's right, it reads. So if the drawing is right, 98% of your work is done. And color is just a little bit of a pimple on top of value. You can do basically anything you want as long as you get some variety. You follow some semblance of the real world if you want it to feel naturalistic. Color just isn't that important nearly as shape. But your comments about the painter of light. How many people in this room know who Thomas Kincaid is?
Unfortunately not.
Oh, thank goodness. Thomas Kincaid he's an art center guy, but he completely sold his soul and painted these really horrible-looking little cottages with nuclear bombs going off inside them on cobblestones with lots of highlights in every single little cobblestones. And Americans ate this stuff up. It was like a really cheesy Norman Rockwell. And he trademarked himself as the painter of light. So, of course, you have no idea who that is or what the reference is.
No, I didn't.
I won't have to slug you.
No, sorry. I didn't tell you that you are the painter of light. I just told you that amazed me the way you work with light.
Yeah, I know.
And because I think, we know a lot of artists, painting and doing, but I think. Sorry, I don't want to disturb you with that, but I think it's really subtle, and I don't see that, frequently anywhere. Perhaps in some old painter or stuff, but it's rare for me. So there is some special ingredient I didn't figure out yet. So that's my question.
Well, I guess if if I look at most digital art and how color is used and or not used in atmospheric perspective, everything is backlit, and distance from camera is given by value. That's just, it's the quickest, easiest way of showing what's in front of something else. And if you're concerned about expression or the quality of the art, then maybe you shouldn't be doing that. But if you're trying to get something out before the end of the day to show the director tomorrow, that's fine. But I always think, because Ian and I were talking about this, is he has a feeling that so much concept art seems to be a dog and pony show or a competition to look good in the art of books. And I said, I think I'm probably responsible for some of that. And he said, you're responsible for all of it. Because, Ian says, look, I'm a designer. You take a pencil and you design it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. You solve the problem and you move on. And at Art Center, there's tons of people that felt the same exact way, that Art Center was the land of lying through rendering. But I look at it like, there are problems that can be solved in a napkin sketch, but there are some problems or solutions or ideas or concepts that can only be expressed through a long rendering. I mean, there's just different things. You can solve basic stuff through napkin sketches, it's true, but if I'm trying to really show what something could look like in the end, with cinematography and everything, it's going to require a bit more time and a bit more thought of what it's going to be. So I'm the painter of light. I like it now.
Yeah. Didn't want to insult you at all, please.
Well, I think when this is over, you should leave out the back.
Yeah,
they're
please,
all going to kill you.
please.
Tell Adobe, I barely got out with my life, man.
Come
There's
on,
arrows sticking out of my back.
What is this?
You better serve those illustrators.
What's this red light? Come on. So, no, that was more, I like your light in general. And let me just also enjoying watching you, painting. Yes, question, yeah.
Well, I'm in a project like that right now that is so secret that they can't tell me anything. Say, we need a concept art. What's it going? What should I paint? We can't tell you. Well, okay.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, you laugh, but that's really about the size of it. But yeah, when you're, everybody has their natural things that they draw easily or falls into their hand or their mind easily, and some things are much more difficult. I find it difficult to when the script says something no human has ever seen before. That's a really common line in script. Okay, we need to come up with something totally different. Okay, and then they bring you like the Post-it full of Sid Mead's V'ger or some other cloud tank stuff, and put eyes in it. Something that's incredibly abstract like that. It's just I would so much rather paint something that's real, like an apple sitting on a table. But I think because I like doing that, if I can get my head around these abstract things, I can make it more real, which is probably why I'm employed, is because I can make the leap from real things, naturalistic things, apples on tables, to intergalactic clouds consuming the Earth. It's the same rules, a different scale. So does that answer your question? Okay.
I'm looking my note because, that was supposed to be half hour, interview. So I think I will just enjoy. And if you have any question, I think I heard. So it's 5 minutes, yeah. So yeah. Oh, too much talking for me.
Does Ian have any requests of what I'm doing to his poor design here?
Yeah.
Just finish it. Okay.
Okay.
I don't even know what finish looks like anymore. Oh.
Yeah, I just don't want to talk anymore. I just want to watch because when I'm talking.
Questions?
Huh?
Really?
Yeah, I could have some. Yeah.
Huh?
One question on the room? Yes, on the back.
I go back and forth. I think they really support one another. I'm kind of against the idea of somebody saying, "Oh, I don't need to learn the figure because I want to be an environmental artist." That's really like, oh man, you're going to be on this planet for another 60 years, and you just can't really say that. I mean, the amount you can learn about the world and how you can raise your own sensitivity to things by learning all you can about the human figure, that applies so much to everything you'll ever paint. So yeah, I really try to weave in and out of every kind of interest because they all support one another. It's very important to stay wide in your interests. So how many people have heard me do my shtick about there's no such thing as good composition? Only one?
No. No.
Were you in Toronto, I think, was it? Oh, the Noman DVD, yeah. Okay. Yeah, the basic idea, and obviously that's a troll line to get people to sit up and listen. Like, okay, he's going to say something important now. Sorry, I'm not painting Ian. The idea is that there are various rules or academic conceptions of what makes good composition. And if we accept that that is true, there's probably some type of physical basis in the human brain that responds to certain arrangements. But we know that that's not true because you can't take a Raphael to New Guinea in the forest and have them go, wow, I love it. So it's the idea that, or maybe more simply I could say it, any set of rules, any rule that you give me that you say forms the basis of everything that is good art or good composition, if you use composition as an example of a set of rules in art, then I should not be able to find an acknowledged masterwork that breaks it or doesn't break it. Of course you can. Any rule you find, I can find an exception to it. So what does that say about the rules? It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It simply means that it's a convenient fiction of the moment that's getting us through the next day and getting us to do our art, but it is not the truth. La vérité, no. So what does that mean as far as us practicing artists? It means that you should, in fact, feel free to put the horizon right down the freaking middle of the page if you feel like it, because there's no law that anybody says that you can't do that, if it works for you. But I would also say that if you're going to take the law into your own hands, that you have to be, use that power responsibly and not sit there and say, well, Craig Mullins said I could. So, because, I won't take the call. But what it does mean is our knowledge of how art works is very, very, very incomplete. Our formal knowledge of how it works is incomplete. But if you use your intuition properly, you'll always be right because your eye knows and the way you feel about it knows. So I've my working suggestion is to paint intuitively, do what you like, and don't worry about anything else. And if you like it and have been strict with yourself and not simply use that freedom to give yourself a pass, then you're going to produce something that other people are going to like too. And if someone wants to formalize it or try to figure out why it works, well, that's what academics are for. And academics are going to follow behind practicing artists as practicing artists go off to areas that haven't been explored or can't be explained. It's not that it's mystical or spiritual in any way, it simply hasn't been formalized. To me, this idea has big implications for art education, because how do you teach people what is good composition if our understanding of what good composition is so faulty? And it is. Well, so I say, just do what you like. In which case, why are you spending all this money on art school? Well, good question. Because, you're going to run into pedantic folks that are going to give you, what's his name, who did that little rule book of landscape composition? Edgar Payne. And people are going to read through that and say, ooh, 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 ooh. And triangles put this way toward the middle mean anger. What? But that's the type of stuff. It's a very 19th century idea that people would write these things and make these pictograms of what different things meant. Anyway, that's enough on that rant. So now you know why there's no such thing as good composition.
So we had to stop.
Are we out of time?
Oh, I'm really sorry about that.
A bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to crop
Little bit more.
this.
No.
Yeah, it's really close. Okay, I'm sad about that. Are you sure? So what to say?
Well,
Bye.
I'll save it.
Yeah. So great. So thanks. Yeah. Yeah, just once, because we need to.
Yeah, even stuff that shouldn't be. I don't know. It's to me, when it tells the story, or when it starts looking labored or too tight, or it starts to lose vitality, then you're probably best to leave it alone. I've just seen too many paintings, at least of mine. I know Richard Schmid, the oil painter, talks about this a lot, where he gets it barely beyond the block-in stage, and the number of times when continued work actually improves it is very small. But then he's judging it by perhaps very different standards than a producer in LA would, or somebody else who might be evaluating your work. But to keep something that's loose and looks nice, it places even more stress on the design and drawing. It has to be even better, because a lot of illustration that isn't very good, I think, depends on being really tight and clean to carry the day instead of being well drawn or well designed. But you could say it the opposite, saying, well, I think all your fancy brushwork and textures is covering up a big muckety-muck of crappy anatomy and bad drawing. I'd say, okay. Because it's certainly true in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Greg. And I'm
Thank
really,
you.
really